Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So just some quick thoughts on what we're seeing happening with the Ukraine and Russia and things like that. We need to understand what we're shown on the mainstream media is not always the truth. A couple of case in points of that before we get into this. I remember seeing a video that had a tank that's coming down the street, and it looks like it just veers over to run over this car that an old man was driving. It was reported that was a Russian tank. It turns out that was a Ukrainian tank driven by a Ukrainian soldier that did not have a lot of training and had lost control on the pavement and actually ran over that car. So they pushed it that it was Russia doing it. That was not Russia doing it. Then up recently we've had where they were reporting that Russia was hitting a nuclear reactor facility with armament that they were taking. They were launching artillery and hitting it with tanks and stuff like that. Turns out that was actually false as well. They took the videos where Russia was launching flares into that area to get those people to leave so they could take over that plant, but at no point was any artillery actually fired at the reactor. So makes you wonder, what's the narrative that we're seeing here, guys? The mainstream media is playing off of a card that they're being given by the world leaders, by our leaders here in our country, which is to further escalate and gain support for going to war with Russia, is what my opinion is on this. So the reason I say that, guys, is before Putin actually came over into the Ukraine and invaded, 2 days before that happened, Joe Biden sends Kamala Harris over to Europe, and she gets on national television and is congratulating and just going on and on about how amazing and how wonderful it is that the Ukraine is wanting to join NATO, and she wishes him the best of luck in the nomination process. 2 days later, Russia invades. That's why Russia's over there, because of Kamala Harris's big flapper. All right. There was some stuff going on over there. We may never know what it truly was, but Hunter Biden had a cush job over in the Ukraine, and it was one of those situations where, excuse me, guys, he was getting paid hundreds of $millions to do who knows what. He has absolutely no skill set. He is nothing more than a meth head. I'm sorry if you have loved ones that are falling into that. Would you put them over some strategic, area in another country? Probably not. So Trump's trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. So he notices that Russia is really ramping up. So what does he do? He cuts the military aid. Tell us what's happening over here, or we're cutting your aid. And he does that. Russia backs down. Now, you can say that, okay, well, that proves that Trump's working with Russia, or to me, it proves that he understands to de-escalate a situation, you have to de-escalate the situation. So some of the reports are coming in now that Poland wants to give some new MiGs over to the Ukrainian pilots and things like that. They can't fly them in, so they're saying, well, send your pilots over here, then they can fly the planes in. How do you think Russia will respond to that? How is Putin going to see that? He's going to see that as an act of war coming from a NATO ally. And you end up with a World War III scenario. There's an analyst on last night, and a really good report, guys. Recommend that you try to research a lot of this stuff. But this analyst gets up and he's saying everyone is concerned about when World War III is going to start. And he's saying, he posed the question, has it already started, but we just haven't seen it escalate to the point of worldwide yet? It's a good question to ask. We're seeing our prices at record highs on fuel. And I'm not talking just for areas. I'm talking since the inception of gasoline. It has never cost this much for fuel ever. And the ramifications of that, understand, if we de-escalate today, if Russia's pull everybody out right now, before you would see those prices come back down, guys, you were looking at our lifetime will go by. We will all be dead before we see prices of gasoline back around $2 a gallon, if ever. It's just not going to happen. Biden has the opportunity to reopen our oil refineries. So what did him and Kamala Harris did? They went in and they said, well, we'll look into it. And they purposefully manipulated the paperwork so it would get denied on a federal level, that it cannot be reopened and it cannot go back up to vote for 5 years. Biden and them done that. You think it's because they was incompetent? Or do you think their incompetence is just a stage, just a show, so people don't get mad and they go, well, they're just, that's just them. They don't really know what they're doing. I believe they know what they're doing. I believe most of what we're seeing up there is an act. And I think people need to understand that this country is going to suffer from the economic ramifications of the sanctions that we're putting on Russia. Now, Putin, the Russian military, the Russian government, the up and coming, Russian Soviet Union that he's trying to rebuild, it's not going to see those economic sanctions hurt them much. That's going to hurt people like you and people like me over there that are just trying to live their lives. That's who it's going to hurt. The economic sanctions are going to hurt us here at home. The reason I say that is because a lot of the allies that Russia is currently garnering, this has really just solidified Russia and China together. They're drawing Iran in. They're drawing Syria in. Now they're condemning some of these countries, condemning them on the national scene in the UN, but they're pulling in with them as partners. Why? Because Russia, Vladimir Putin, that everyone seems to be, convinced he's just some madman, is actually very smart. Before all this stuff started, he had been giving his Russian citizens farmland and the equipment to work it so that they can build a network of food and become one of the dominating countries of food production. And that's why you're seeing wheat prices go up. A lot of the countries that are joining in with him make fertilizers that come into our country. Fertilizers that used to cost $250 for a metric ton are now going to cost almost $1,000 for that same metric ton. Farmers aren't going to be able to pay that. It's going to reduce our crops dramatically. That's not even including the tornadoes and hurricanes and wildfires and things like that they deal with on a yearly basis. So we're going to see a major drop in food. So I hope you're prepping, guys. I really do. This is not a video to encourage you just to prep, but I want you to understand this is what's happening around the world today. This is what we're seeing. Are we trying to de-escalate the situation? No, we are not. Our leadership is not de-escalating anything. That is why they're pushing for CERN. For those who don't know what CERN is, it is a nuclear research facility located in Geneva, Switzerland. So, as we all know, Switzerland is supposed to be neutral. They're not getting involved in politics. Well, they want them to get rid of the 1,000 Russian scientists that work over there. They don't want them out of there. Get them out. If Switzerland follows suit with that, they are no longer neutral. How do you think Vladimir Putin is going to react being cut off from one of the most prestigious high-end research and nuclear research? He's going to take it as an act of war. He's already said the sanctions are an act of war. He will go to war and he will go nuclear. Have no mistake about that. Anyone that says that this guy will not go nuclear, they haven't been paying attention. He would go nuclear just like Donald Trump would go nuclear. If it meant the end of everything but the salvation of his country in his mind, they would go nuclear. The morons we got in office, the president and the vice president and their cabinet we have up there right now, they are not as dumb as they portray. We look at our press secretary up there, old Psaki. She gets up, she'll ask questions to all of her goons, and then she'll ask one person, okay, go ahead and ask your question. And when they ask a question, they ask the question, why are we looking to these other countries to reopen fuel when Biden can, with the stroke of a pen, open up our own gas lines again, get our production going again? He can do that. Executive order, he can do that. Is he going to? No. She didn't ask the question. She went around and about and then tried to talk about how the federal government was against it. And then it was brought up about how they boggled the paperwork to reopen it. And that it seemed like it was on purpose. And again, she went around saying that it's racist to not want to do business with these other countries and we have to take the moral high ground. Taking the moral high ground does not mean that you go and turn away from this country that's bad and go to these countries over here that are guilty of genocide and every other freaking crime and unthinkable act in the world. That's not taking the moral high ground and begging them, breaking the system. And understand, all of this, in my opinion, is to bring about one big thing, guys. Several things, but it's to bring about one system. They want to depopulate the earth. They've been talking this stuff. The elite's been talking this for, the last 10, 20 years. What better way to do it? 2019, they had a war game type deal where these people come in, they, kind of think tank situation. And they said within the first month of World War III, when it finally was to escalate to a point that it was known as World War III, 1 billion lives would be lost. 1 billion out of a world that has 6.5 billion people in it. 1 billion would be gone. That's just a month into it. So obviously there's nuclear stuff going on. There's going to be long-term ramifications of that. Do we see anything in the Bible that talks about, hey, we're getting to a point? That's 1/6 of the population. Let's kick it up a little bit. A few months later, does 1/3 of the population drop out? Are there any verses in the book of Revelation that talks about 1/3 of the population being killed off? Absolutely. So we are seeing the unfolding of the biblical events of the end days, the end times. It is not the end of the world as you would understand it, is the end of an era. And as I said at the beginning of this video, anytime you end one era and you come into another one, it is done through an act of violence. Think of it as we come to the New World, we break away from British rule, the Revolutionary War. We come into a new era. Then the United States government wants full power, and they go to war, the Civil War. Then you have World War I, World War II. Let's take it back. All of those are violent acts. Let's take it back even further. So we're leaving the old covenant, and we're coming into the new covenant of the Lamb's blood. What solidifies that? A sacrifice through the violent act of actually killing Jesus Christ. All throughout history, if you research history, when you leave one era and open into another one, there's always a major violent act that happens. And that is the only way that our government knows how to end one page and start another. To end this chapter and start another. Maybe the next chapter will be energy independence. That's what Kamala Harris got up there. She's not worried about the fuel prices. Well, of course she's not. But she says because we're going to be energy dependent by the end of the year. I don't see it. Well, maybe if you end up killing off most of the population through some kind of a war, could happen. This is all a narrative they're pushing. Don't fall for it. There was when I first heard about this Zelensky guy, I was really impressed. This man staying over there in his country while it's being invaded, and he's like, I'll fight to the last man, and he himself would die. I was very impressed with that. But as I got to doing some research, I come to find out that this guy was an actor, and he actually had wrote his own cartoon series where he was the main character, and he did the voiceover for. He was the president of Ukraine. This is before he was actually the president of Ukraine, and it was kind of comedic and slapstick in your face toward Russia and stuff. And it's based off of that is how he got elected. So some interesting stuff. So when he gives his speeches and you're moved to tears and things like that, understand that he's an actor, and that's what they are paid to do. Just like Tom Cruise, just like Matthew McConaughey, or any of them other actors up there that get those big Guild Awards because they made the audience cry and stuff. I do not believe the narrative that's being pushed. I believe that this is, for one thing, is to get rid of this and bring about the digital age, the beast system. The reason I say that is right now we are seeing where China is funding Vladimir Putin and the war, even though there's sanctions coming out. It's being funded through Bitcoin. Don't believe me? Research it. The same thing is going on with Ukraine. Bitcoin is what's funding the relief efforts over there. It's coming in through Bitcoin because they can't get it across the borders. If you come in with cash, they can embargo it, but they can't touch Bitcoin. They don't have any actual, it's not something you can put your hands on. So, something to think about. How do you get rid of US dollar and go to a one world currency? Bitcoin. Even now, people are talking, go to Bitcoin. The US money's not going to be worth anything. All around the world, people go to Bitcoin. The US dollar's dropping out. This is dropping out. We need to switch over to Bitcoin. Why are they saying that? Because they want a one world currency. That's why. And you have to make a decision in life. Do you follow the rest of the herd, or do you stand upon your beliefs? I will not go to a one world currency. I will not go to a digital currency, because here's why. Stuff can get hacked. We have hackers out there. They're hacking people's websites. They're hacking people's bank accounts. They're hacking their gaming accounts. They're hacking their emails and all that stuff. So how do you protect against that? Well, hey man, it's amazing because they've actually got a way to protect against that. So what they do is they go into biometric data, which is going to do a retina scan, it can do a thumbprint, but it'll also be backed up by a biometric chip. What does that sound like? Sounds like the mark of the beast. And they have brought this out many times, and when it gets up, everyone is all like, that sounds like the mark of the beast. That sounds like the mark of the beast. So they back away from it, they back away from it, they back away from it. World War III breaks out, and you think you're going to be back away from it when your freedom as you know it is gone? Understand, after World War II, we don't know what the world looked like. You should talk to your parents and your grandparents, guys. Especially your great grandparents, that for those who were around could have heard some stories from them. When a lot of these servicemen came back from the war, suddenly there was Nazi Germany type actions of papers. Where's your papers? Where's your driver's license? Where's your registration for your vehicle? Where's your recently, where's your proof of health insurance? Oh, you didn't have health insurance? Okay. We're going to charge you a fine for something that you decided you didn't need. Well, did you need it? Did you go to the doctor? No. Well, you're still going to pay for it because we got to pay for these other people that get it for free. Parking fines. Oh, you got to pay to park here. Okay. They didn't have parking meters before World War II, but when a lot of them boys finally coming back, they didn't understand why they had parking meters. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Cool Hand Luke back in the day. That's what he was arrested for. He was cutting the heads off parking meters because it made him mad. He was a war hero. He'd come back and they're charging to park, writing tickets because they didn't pay to park in that spot. I mean, this is supposed to be America. We're no longer a free country. We are no longer a country based on freedoms. If you have been paying attention for the last 40 years, you will see where they have systematically been destroying our freedoms. Now, do we have more freedoms than most of the world? Yes. Will that continue? No. They need a big event to erase that, to build back better, to re-establish the foundation. And that's what this is about over there, I believe. It's up to you to decide, guys. We're living in the biblical end times. We're at the point where it's going to be the end of the age of the Gentiles, and it's going to refocus back on Israel. So what has history taught us? What does the Bible show us? It's going to be a violent time just before that transition. You know, we read about the raptured church. When does that happen? Before all of this happens? I'm still here. I know where my heart, leans on, where my faith is at. My faith is in the Lord. So I believe we're going to see even more of it because we're already seeing it, guys. Have a wonderful day. I hope you tune into our live stream tomorrow. We're really going to get into some of this stuff, guys, with the pinky and the brain. So you got one who's acting like a genius and one that's insane. But that cartoon, if you ever watched it, it might make you wonder which one is truly the genius and which one's insane. So we're going to discuss that tomorrow. Everyone have a wonderful day.